Alright, so looking at group influence, how do groups affect our behavior? Social psychologists study various groups, one person affecting another, families, teams, committees. They look at all of those different types of groups. So group influence on behavior. Let's look at how groups affect our behavior first. One of the ideas, one of the terms, social facilitation, refers to your improved performance on task in the presence of others. And Triplett, who was actually one of the first sports psychologists, he studied cyclists, and he noticed that race times were faster when they competed against others than when they just raced against the clock. So it occurs with a simple or a well-learned task, not with tasks that are difficult or that we don't know yet, but when it's something simple, running from point A to point B, our time will be faster if we are competing against others, not just if we are competing against a clock. And so that's the idea of social facilitation, that our performance gets better in the presence of others. We need a crowd or whatever it is, we need those people to perform better. Then there's also, and this happens most of the time when the task is hard, that social loafing, the tendency for people in a group to exert less effort when pulling their efforts towards a common goal than if they were individually accountable. So if you're doing a group project, you always have some social loafers, and if you're like, we don't, it could be you. So that you're not as individually accountable because you're doing it in a group, so you know that, oh, this person over here, they'll do the work, I'm not worried about it. Or whenever you run to group yourselves with people who you're like, oh, I want to be the smart person, and you run to group yourself with those people, or maybe they're running to group themselves with you, that's social loafing. So then we have this concept of de-individuation, which is the loss of self-awareness and self-restraint. It's that mob mentality. It occurs in group situations that foster arousal, and then also we can become anonymous. So we're just a blank picture. That idea, we talked about it in class. They can't all fail us, or what happens if we all walk out of the school? And that group behavior, that that you do things in groups, that you become aroused in a group, and you also have that sense of being anonymous, leads to these mob behavior. Effects of group interaction. Group polarization enhances a group's prevailing attitudes through a discussion. If a group is like-minded, discussion then will strengthen its prevailing opinions and attitudes. So whenever you're in a group, if you all are very vocal and you all feel the same way, talking about it is only going to strengthen those attitudes and those opinions. So in a high prejudice group, discussion among like-minded people strengthens their pre-existing attitudes. You can see it on the chart over there. In groups that have a lot of prejudice, they aren't very like-minded, the prejudice more likely goes away after the discussion. But group polarization is this idea that we polarize our ideas, that a group's prevailing attitudes through a discussion, it only enhances those original kind of thoughts, those opinions. The concept that a group's attitude is one of extreme and rarely moderate. Like a group, both like the Black Panthers and the Ku Klux Klan, are more extreme than the average individual in the group. Their behavior is guided and geared by being in that group. That might not be the person they are 24/7, but when they put on whatever it is that they're wearing, when they get with that group, they become extremist. And then you also have this idea of groupthink. So the mode of thinking that occurs when the desire for harmony in a decision-making group overrides common sense. So, like for example, if there's a Northbrook High School, right, and there was hazing, could that be an example of groupthink? Yes. So 2003, there was a flag football game at a local high school, and the game served as an initiation into the senior class for the juniors, and it got way out of hand. That they started, it was something that was supposed to make them feel as part of the group. Again, in a hazing situation, in a fraternity example, even just hazing to get into a group, it starts out as this normal kind of wanting to be harmonious kind of thing. We want to be a group, we want to show our pride, and then it overrides our common sense, and we do really bad things. You force people to do things that you would never do because you're in a group and you've got this group kind of mentality. It's the thinking part of the de-individuation. A lot of historical fiascos were the results of groupthink. Failure to anticipate the attack on Pearl Harbor, that they're weak, they're not going to do anything, and then Pearl Harbor happens, and you're like, oh, well, maybe we should have taken it more seriously. So it's a mode of thinking that occurs when the desire for harmony in decision-making group overrides the realistic appraisal of alternatives. Kennedy and the Bay of Pigs, again, all of these are examples of groupthink. The Watergate cover-up, they're realistic. They did not realistically think about what the other alternatives were. One person had an idea, everybody jumped on board, and then you've got this decision, and whether it's a good or a bad decision, a lot of times it's a bad decision, but that's the direction that we move in. Knowing the weapons in Iraq, we thought that there were weapons, we went with it, we didn't really look anywhere else, and so we just went with it to that, to an extreme degree. We also influence ourselves. The power of the individual can be stronger than the group. So people like Gandhi, the power of social influence is enormous, but our power as individuals is enormous as well. Nonviolent fast and appeals by Gandhi led to the independence of India from the British. I mean, that's crazy that one individual was able to do that. We have these self-fulfilling prophecies. Occurs when one person's belief about others leads one to act in ways that induce to others to appear to confirm the belief. So if you think someone finds you attractive, they're more likely that they will. So you behave in a way that leads them to actually find you more attractive. So that's the end of that. If you have any questions about self-fulfilling prophecies, group behavior, groupthink, de-individuation, make sure you come to them with me in class.